A little bit later on, it is a service, of course, of our fine friends at Good News Mountaineer Garage and Parade Construction. And again, I'll give you that contact information a little bit later on. But before we get into that, we have one of those candidates in studio with us right now. Little unconventional, but that's okay. We got Marshall Wilson in with us. Marshall, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Dave, you didn't mention that free of charge bit to me when we talked earlier.
Oh, it's free to everybody but you. Okay, so as my dad used to be a Sunday school superintendent, he would say to the congregation, he would say, "Now it's free to get in, but it's $20 to get out." So we'll get you on the way out. But Marshall Wilson has been a delegate, and we're going to tell you about his background a little bit later on. But he is efforting to be the governor of the state of West Virginia.
Yes, sir.
Doing a little bit differently.
And as a retired infantryman, I know how to effort.
And we use effort as a verb. Tell us, who is Marshall Wilson?
Well, I am the father of 9. I am a retired U.S. Army infantry officer with a master's degree in national security focused on how free societies devolve into totalitarian ones. I am I'm currently sitting delegate, South Berkeley County, District 60. I was a Republican, elected as a Republican. I switched to independent when the leadership of the Republican Party here in West Virginia made it eminently clear to me that they did not intend to uphold the principles that they publicly stated, which were very close to my principles. So I figured that to uphold my principles, which are the founding principles of this nation, I would have to go it alone. So here we are. I'm an independent.
What was the feedback that you got when you switched from Republican to independent?
Oh, well, it varied widely. From a lot of my Republican friends, I was told that I was making a mistake. From a lot of my Republican friends, I was told, wow, you have you have a lot of courage. And I actually had a number of them tell me that they not only respected me and admired me, but that they were jealous that I had so much courage. And I responded, well, courage is simply the natural response to recognizing that something is more valuable than you are yourself. And I learned that as an infantryman. After 20 years, it's become ingrained in me. I simply recognize that there are things that are more valuable than myself, than my political career, than my comfort, than my ease, than my wealth. How is it the gentleman put it? They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to uphold these principles, and I can do no less. And those principles are that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that the government exists only to uphold and defend those rights, and that it draws its just power from the governed.
What was it about, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but expound upon that, Marshall. What was it about the Republican Party in West Virginia that led you to say, I'm done?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, the first thing that happened in my experience with Republican, quote, leadership in West Virginia was I announced that I was running for delegate. And the day that I announced that I was running for delegate, leaders in Berkeley County of the Republican Party there came and asked me to please go home because they'd already picked their candidate. And my response was, well, see, that's not how this works. What you do is you, as the party, maintain the arena, and we, the people, choose our candidates. And the response that I got was, well, we've already got a guy. Mm-hmm. Why don't you see the district next to you, which is Martinsburg, by the way? They need a Republican candidate. And I said, well, I'm not moving to Martinsburg. I like where I live, and I live here on purpose. And the response was, well, you don't have to actually live there. And I said, look, I don't lie for myself, and I'm not going to lie for you. So that was the first thing that kind of raised a red flag for me that maybe things weren't all the way they were supposed to be. From there, I did my best to serve in the legislature once I was elected, in spite of the fact that the party had already chosen a candidate that they liked better than me. I somehow managed to beat that candidate and the party, even though I had no name recognition, I had no money. All I had was a message, and that message is all men are created equal. Government exists to uphold your rights. That's it. That was my message, and I won. And from there, I tried to serve as a delegate and was repeatedly told to sit down, shut up, vote the way the majority leader votes, toe the party line. I said, I can't do that. I have to stand up for my principles. I was accused of trying to tear things down. I said, no, what I'm trying to do is build up the Constitution. And you are trying to build party power. I'm not interested in party power. I'm interested in building our Constitution. I actually made a motion to remove Tim Armstead as the Speaker because he was an integral part. He was actually the linchpin of that system that made it impossible for the delegates to actually represent their constituents, and instead had to represent, quote, the party line. So I decided to attempt to remove that linchpin. From there, the party recruited someone to run against me in my next primary. I beat him, was reelected, spent the next year as a Republican delegate, once again fighting for what the Republican platform says are our principles. I did the best that I could do. I actually was elected at that point also as a member of the Berkeley County Republican Executive Committee and attempted to work through that system, through the party itself, to make changes. And one day I was informed by a friend of mine that he had gone to the bathroom during an executive committee meeting, and another member of the executive committee, and when he came back from the bathroom, he'd been informed that he was kicked off the committee. And I said, well, you were elected by the people of your magisterial district. You weren't elected by the committee. They can't kick you off just without any kind of process. And he said, well, they've done it. So I contacted Mrs. Potter, and I said, hey, we need to talk about this. And she said, we do not. And I said, this is
Melody Potter, the Republican Party chairperson
for the state.
You're referring to, yes. Okay.
And I simply asked her for some help. I said, hey, how do we deal with this? How do we correct this issue? And she said, you need to learn how to get along with people. I said, no, we need to learn how to uphold our principles. And that started it was kind of strange to me. I fully expected that her response was going to be, well, let's correct this situation and move on from here. Shortly thereafter, of course, she personally went in and fired the chairman of the Wood County Executive Committee. He was elected by his committee. He was elected as a member of that committee by the people of his magisterial district, and she just sort of went in and guillotined him and threw him out, which she has no power to do, by the way. Mm-hmm. So it's apparent to me, and then, of course, she did some interesting things with the Kanawha County Executive Committee as well. The point is that all of this indicates that there is a dearth of understanding of the founding principles of this nation, of good governance, of ethical behavior, and it's even it's throughout both parties, from what I can tell, both major parties. So obviously, to pursue those principles, I had to become an independent. That's what I've done. I will stand for those principles no matter what it costs me, and this is why. Because I want my kids to raise their kids in a free, just, prosperous, and secure land. And the only way that's possible is if we reestablish constitutional governance. And I will lay down my life to make it happen.
So fast forward now. Now you're running for governor. All right.
Yes, sir.
Take us through the process of how, because that's been unique as well. Tell us about where you were and where that fight is now.
Okay. Well, I was a delegate, was going to finish up this term, and got my master's in national security, and I live 90 miles from D.C. I was going to become a national security consultant. That was my intent. I was going to leave the legislature. I'd done my duty for my state, served my 4 years, and I was going to move on down the line. And I endorsed the only constitutionalist in the Republican candidate, the only constitutionalist Republican candidate in the governor's race, Mike Folk. I worked hard for him, gave him the little bit of money that I had, tried to convince everybody I could to vote for him. Obviously, he didn't pull out the nomination. And I sat down with my wife, and I said, darling, we got to do something. I mean, can you imagine the state of affairs that we are going to be in if Jim Justice is the governor for 4 more years? And she said, well, what's the other guy look like? And I said, well, anyway, can you imagine what this state's going to be like?
This will be Ben Salango, the Democratic.
Can you imagine
nominee.
what this state is going to be like if we end up with a statist in charge for another 4 years? Somebody who honestly believes that the state owns you, that the state gets to direct your life and make your decisions for you. She said, I know what you're saying. You want to run for governor. You're an independent. It's going to be really hard. Give me 3 days to think about it. I said, yes, ma'am. You've got all the time in the world. Mm-hmm. So she took her 3 days, asked me a bunch of really tough questions. I signed up to run as an independent. We began gathering our signatures. The governor issued his unconstitutional COVID edicts, which shut down venues. I couldn't hold meetings. I couldn't go see mass numbers of people. I couldn't knock on doors because people were locked inside. I said, can I please do this electronically? And the answer I got was no. Okay, well, it's the 21st century. You can do things electronically. Apparently you can do mass mail-in voting, but you can't do secure online transactions to get people's signatures. Okay. I said, in that case, because you have put these massive restrictions on my activities and you're still requiring me to get signatures, can we cut the number in half like these 4 or 5 other states have had? And I referenced the specific cases where the states have done it. The answer was no. I said, fine. I'm an infantryman. I'm going to soldier through. I'm going to fight through this thing. We built a big group statewide. We made a lot of friends all over the state, and we collected 5,700 signatures. turned them in on August 3rd at about 11 o'clock at night. And I want to thank the gentleman from the State Department and the nice lady who hung around and made sure that they were there when we came to turn our papers in. I'm really grateful for that. But the 5,700 signatures we got were in spite of the governor's unconstitutional edicts. The worst thing he did, though, was he moved the primary. So, of course, I couldn't get started I couldn't really give everything I had to this until after the primary, because most of the people who wanted to sign my petition would not sign until their guy had lost the primary. So we lost a month of prime time gathering signatures. So what I finally did was I said, can I just have that month back? Can you push the deadline back a month? And the response I got from the governor's office was, Wilson, the governor can't just willy-nilly change things because it affects things downstream. I said, you mean like willy-nilly changing the date of the primary and how it affected me downstream? And the answer was no. So we did our best. We worked really hard. I traveled all over the state, met people in every holler you can imagine, on every mountaintop you can imagine. And then, we came up with 5,700, which was short. So the next day we sued the Secretary of State and the governor. Effectively, the Secretary of State's office issued a memorandum that said, pretty much Wilson's correct. And what I was asking was that my name be put on the ballot. And the governor's office, with the support of the representation of the Attorney General, effectively said, well, you've got no case here because you slept on your rights. And what that means is, if you really believe that your rights were being infringed upon, you should have sued us back in March when the edicts were issued. In other words, I should have sat on my couch and sued the government instead of actually trying to meet the requirements, in spite of the illegal, the unconstitutional restrictions that were placed upon us. I should have sat on my behind and sued instead of actually trying to get the job done. So that's the position we're in now. What we're doing now is a write-in campaign. I will not quit. We've got billboards going up all over the state. We've got a big network of volunteers, a lot of really disappointed people who want their government to change, who want constitutional governance. And the best way to find us is at marshallforwv.com, MARSHALLFORWV.com. And then we've got a YouTube channel you can access through that website. Also, if you want to contact me on Facebook, I make a habit of actually interacting with people on Facebook. And also on our website, you can request yard signs. You can interact with the team and try to schedule a visit so I can come out and say hi to you. And I'd be grateful for that opportunity. All I care about is reestablishing constitutional governance and ensuring that every single person in this state is allowed the opportunity to speak into their government.
Our final, and you've been on the show before, and you do the final 30, so you've already done the final 30 there. So include that. Your thought? I know you talked about it being unconstitutional.
Yes,
the edicts on the pandemic. Final thing I will get to. What do you think about it is unconstitutional?
Oh, well, I mean, that's fairly obvious. First of all, the governor is the chief executive, which means he's the chief of the executive branch, which means that he has directorial authority over one thing and one thing only, and that is the body of the executive branch of the government. That's it, period. He has no authority whatsoever to tell the people of the state to do anything. I've traveled the state, and people always say, well, he's in charge of the state. No, he is in charge of the executive branch of the government. That's all. You know who's in charge of the state? We the people. And the government are the people we hire to manage our affairs for us. That's all it is.
Give us your website and contact information again.
Thank you, sir. MarshallForWV.com. MARSHALLFORWV.com.
Wish you the best. It's going to be an uphill battle, but you've had them before. So
that's what I do, is uphill battles. Thank you, sir.
All right, Marshall Wilson.